Most fatal accidents on hiking trails do not happen deep in the wilderness. They happen less than 5 miles from a parking lot, a paved road, or a house with a working phone line. That single fact, repeated across search and rescue records from different regions, does not fit the story most people expect. Expeditions are supposed to be the dangerous part. Familiar places are supposed to be safe. The record disagrees. This file examines why proximity to safety appears to change how people behave, and why that change, not the terrain itself, is what turns a short walk into a fatality. The pattern is not about distance from civilization, it is about distance from caution. The question this file keeps returning to is simple. What is the one decision made in the first 30 minutes of a trip that separates the people who walked home from the people who did not? If you want more dark survival files like this, subscribe now, leave a like so this reaches the people who need it, and comment which case should be investigated next. In the next few minutes, 4 things will become clear. Why short, familiar trails appear more often in fatality records than remote expeditions. What people carry or stop carrying once a route feels routine. Why the decision to call for help gets delayed the closer someone believes they are to safety. And what separates the cases that ended in recovery from the ones that did not. The first piece of evidence is uncomfortable. Across multiple search and rescue timelines, victims on short local trails were significantly less likely to be carrying water, a map, a light source, or extra layers than victims recovered from remote multi-day routes. This is not a coincidence of terrain. It is a pattern of preparation, or the absence of it, tied directly to how far someone believed they were traveling. But knowing the rule is not enough. You need to know when the rule fails. The pattern holds regardless of experience level. Case files include first-time hikers and veteran outdoorsmen alike, which suggests the effect is not about skill or knowledge, but about how proximity itself resets a person's internal sense of risk. There is a second contradiction buried in these files, and it goes farther than gear or timing. Route familiarity changes decision-making itself. In several recovered case files, hikers on well-known trails made choices, leaving the marked path, continuing despite visible injury, pushing on as light failed, that they would never have made on unfamiliar terrain. Investigators describing these cases use a specific phrase repeatedly. The terrain had not changed, but the person's relationship to risk had. This raises a harder question than what went wrong. It raises the question that families and rescuers struggle to answer afterward. Why do experienced people take their biggest risks in the places they know best? Group dynamics complicate the picture further. In cases involving more than one person, familiarity often produced a kind of shared confidence that neither person would have held alone. 2 hikers on a known trail were less likely to turn back at the first sign of bad weather than 2 hikers on an unfamiliar one, even when the conditions were objectively identical. Each person assumed the other's calm meant the situation was under control, when in fact neither had reassessed the risk at all. Investigators describe this as borrowed confidence, a shared sense of safety that neither person independently verified.
Be prepared for any crisis. The Self-Sufficient Backyard is a practical guide to food production and preservation, water storage, off-grid energy, and backyard projects. Use the link in the description to discover methods suited to your space. Now, back to the video's topic.
This brings us back to where we started. The one decision that separates the people who walked home from the people who did not is not skill, and it is not fitness. According to the pattern across these case files, it is the decision to treat a familiar route with the same caution as an unfamiliar one. Checking weather, telling someone the plan, carrying basic supplies, and calling for help early rather than late. The survivors in these records did something almost unremarkable by comparison. They treated a short hike the way they would treat a longer one. They told someone where they were going and when to expect them back. They carried water and a light source, even for a walk they had done 100 times. And critically, they called for help at the first sign that something did not match their expectations, instead of waiting to see if it would resolve on its own. Here's what the record shows about that last point specifically. In cases where help was requested within the first hour of something going wrong, recovery outcomes were markedly better than in cases where the call came after several hours of attempting to self-rescue. The gap was not always about injury severity. It was about how quickly someone accepted that the situation had changed. There is a detail in these files that rarely makes it into general safety guidance: the specific phrase people used in later interviews to describe why they delayed calling for help. Across dozens of separate accounts, a version of the same sentence appears: "I didn't want to overreact." That sentence, repeated across unrelated cases in different regions, suggests the delay was rarely about lacking a phone signal or a way to signal. It was about a social hesitation, a reluctance to be seen as having misjudged a place they were supposed to know well. Consider one recovered account, reconstructed from a search and rescue debrief. A hiker set out on a trail less than 2 miles from a small town, one he had walked regularly for years. Weather shifted faster than expected, temperatures dropped, and a familiar creek crossing, normally shallow, had risen after days of rain. He attempted the crossing anyway, misjudged the current, and was swept downstream far enough to lose the trail entirely. He waited nearly 3 hours before activating a signal, convinced he could find his way back on his own, certain the town was just over that ridge. Searchers later noted that the ridge he pointed to on their maps was in the wrong direction entirely, a detail that matched a pattern seen across multiple proximity cases, where fatigue and cold degrade a person's sense of direction well before it degrades their confidence in it. He was found the following morning, hypothermic but alive, roughly 400 meters from a road he had driven past hundreds of times, close enough that rescuers described the location afterward as almost impossible to reconcile with how long the search had taken. Searchers noted that his phone, still functional, had full signal for most of the 3 hours he spent trying to navigate on his own, a detail that matched the broader pattern in these files more than any equipment failure could have. A second account, this one from a coastal case file, mirrors the same pattern from a different setting. A woman walking a familiar coastal path during low tide misjudged how quickly the water would return, a timing she believed she knew from years of walking that same stretch. The tide that day arrived nearly 40 minutes earlier than her personal estimate, cutting off the section of beach she needed to cross to return to the trailhead. She waited almost 2 hours, expecting the water to recede again, before finally signaling a passing boat with a bright piece of clothing, a decision she later said she resisted making for most of that time, because the beach was, in her words, somewhere I know better than my own street. She was recovered without serious injury, but the case file notes that the delay in signaling was the single factor investigators flagged as most consequential. Not the tide, not the terrain, but the length of time she spent trusting a memory of the tide over the tide in front of her. Why do experienced people take their biggest risks in the places they know best? The debrief offers a partial answer. He described the moment he decided to cross the creek not as recklessness, but as certainty, the same certainty that came from years of familiarity with a trail that day was no longer the trail he remembered. Investigators later pointed out that the water level, the current speed, and the temperature were all measurably different from any previous crossing he had made, none of which he checked because checking had never felt necessary before. The ancient record goes silent here, but the lesson remains. Distance from home is not what determines risk. Distance from attention is. A 5-mile trail can be more dangerous than a 5-day expedition if the person walking it stops watching the terrain and starts trusting the memory of it instead. That sequence does not require wilderness training. It requires treating every trip, short or long, familiar or new, with the same basic discipline. Know the conditions, tell someone the plan, carry what the situation actually requires, and call for help the moment something stops matching what was expected. None of these steps depend on distance from home. They depend on distance from assumption. Two people can walk the exact same trail 100 times without incident, and on the 101st, only one of them survives. Not because the trail changed, because one of them never stopped checking it.